message is already sealed before you touch it. You will never know what it says. You have been riding for 2 days. Your legs have forgotten what stillness feels like. The horse beneath you is not the horse you started with. It is the third or the fourth you have already stopped counting, and it does not know you, and you do not know it, and that is fine, because there is nothing between you and it that needs to be said. There is a man in Sardis waiting for what is in your pouch. He does not know your name. He will never know your name. The clay was still warm from the fire when they pressed the king's seal into it. You watched it happen. The station master pressed his thumb across the edge to make sure the impression was clean, and then he looked at you, and you looked back, and nothing was said, because nothing needed to be said. You carry the king's voice. You do not need your own. The road in front of you is the width of 3 carriages. It has been this width since Susa. It will be this width until Sardis. Darius built it that way, not out of generosity, but because he understood that everything he owned depended on this road, and roads that are too narrow make armies late and messages slow, and Darius is a man who cannot afford to be either. There are 111 stations between Susa and Sardis. You know 43 of them. At the last station, the stable boy dropped a water jug and one of the horses shied, and you had 15 seconds less than usual to make the transfer. You did it in time. You always do it in time. There is a record kept at every station, and the record goes to Persepolis, and someone in Persepolis reads it, and if there is ever a name in the record attached to the word late, that name does not appear in the record again. You have never been late. You have run in weather so cold the leather pouch cracked at the seam. You have ridden with a fever that made the road ahead seem to tilt sideways. You have crossed the Tigris while it was running too fast for comfort, and the horse was showing the whites of its eyes the entire crossing. You have ridden through 3 days of eastern wind off the Mesopotamian plain that coated your face with fine gray dust, until you could not tell where the dust ended and your skin began. You are the fastest thing on earth. This is not a feeling, it is simply true. A caravan makes this journey in 90 days. The armies of Darius, when they march, take 3 months to cross from Susa to the Aegean coast. You will cover the same distance in 9 days. The empire is 2,699 kilometers long, from the city of Susa in the east to the city of Sardis in the west, and everything that holds it together, every order, every decree, every answer to every question that a satrap has sent to the king, moves on this road, in a pouch like yours, in the hands of a rider like you. You fell once on a wet stone bridge over the Gindus River at the 2nd hour of night. You were up and running before the horse. The message in your pouch has the king's seal. Breaking that seal is death. Losing the pouch is death. Arriving late is not death, but it is the end of the career, and for you those are the same thing. You have not eaten since the last station. The sun is almost gone. The next station is ahead in the dark, and somewhere in the west, a man you will never meet is waiting for a message you will never read. You press your knees in. The road opens out ahead of you, pale and straight in the last light, and the dust rises behind you, and the empire waits. This is Quiet History at Bedtime. If this is your kind of story, a subscribe means everything right now. Every detail in this story comes from the historical record. Just relax. and feel free to let this play as you drift off to sleep. Now, imagine you are 24 years old. You have been running the King's Road for 3 years, and before that you spent 2 years at the main station in Susa, learning what every young angarios must learn before he is trusted with a sealed pouch: the horses, the distances, which mountain passes flood in spring, which river crossings are reliable in autumn and which are not, which station masters are thorough and which are merely filling the hours until they can fill something else. The 2 years of learning were not glamorous. They involved carrying grain and cleaning stalls and holding horses while senior couriers made transfers, and standing at the edge of the yard watching the way a man reads a horse in 10 seconds before he has to ride it. You watched everything. That is still how you learn. You are good at this work. You were always going to be good at this work. Your father cut stone. He worked on the great ceremonial terrace at Persepolis for 11 years, one of tens of thousands of laborers whose daily wages were written into clay tablets by the treasury scribes. You know this because a scribe read you the entry once from one of the tablets they keep in the archives at Persepolis, which are called the fortification tablets because they were found when archaeologists, though you do not use that word, catalogued what the treasury stored: 3 quarts of grain per day, a small ration of beer on feast days, your father's trade, your father's work gang, the name of the overseer above him, all of it pressed into wet clay in wedge marks that will outlast every living person who had anything to do with it, including your father and including you. The clay tablets of Persepolis are permanent in a way that most things in the world are not. Your father's hands were large and always slightly gray at the creases from the limestone dust. He was not unhappy. He was a man who did not think much about whether he was happy or unhappy, who thought instead about whether the work was right, and whether the tools were sharp, and whether the seam he was cutting would hold the weight above it. He told you this was the only way to live. You did not entirely believe him, but you understood what he meant. You did not want to cut stone. The courier service recruited from the sons of palace workers when you were 16. The test was simple: run 20 parasangs, carry a leather sack filled with sand. Do not put it down. 20 parasangs is the distance a man can walk in roughly 20 hours on flat ground, which is not the same as running 20 parasangs, which is the distance at which your body stops asking whether you want to continue and simply begins to decide on its own. You were one of 9 who finished. 3 were assigned to the eastern road toward Bactria and the Indian frontier. The rest were sent west. You were sent west because you finished first, and the western leg is the harder posting. You have thought about whether that was good luck. You have been thinking about it for 3 years. You have not yet decided. Now, before the story moves forward, before the pre-dawn station and the sealed pouch and the road that opens into the dark, you need to understand what you are part of. The road you run is the spine of the largest empire the world has ever seen. Darius, the king of kings, Darius son of Hystespes, of the line of Achaemenes, rules from the Indus River in the east to the Aegean Sea in the west, from the Caucasus Mountains in the north to the first cataracts of the Nile in the south. 23 nations pay tribute to Persepolis. The Persians call them dahu, lands. Each land has a satrap, a governor appointed by the king, answerable to the king, and watched without warning by royal inspectors who travel the road in unmarked carriages and are known quietly as the eyes and ears of the king. When a satrap behaves well, the king knows. When a satrap behaves poorly, the king knows that too, and knows it before the satrap has had time to compose an explanation. The empire is not held together by walls. The Persians do not build walls. The empire is held together by this road. Parts of it existed before Darius. The Assyrians built the eastern sections through their old heartland. The Lydians built portions of the western stretches through Anatolia. But Darius formalized all of it. He paved the critical crossings. He built permanent stone bridges over rivers that previously had only seasonal fords. Bridges wide enough for military supply wagons. Bridges with stone pillars anchored deep enough to survive the spring floods. He installed relay stations at fixed intervals, one station per day's ride, each stocked with fresh horses and couriers and food and guards, and created a system so consistent that a message sent from the treasury at Persepolis reaches the satrap's office in Sardis in 9 days. A journey that takes a merchant caravan 90 days. The relay system is called the angarium. The riders are the angarios. Herodotus, a Greek from Halicarnassus, who will one day write down everything he has learned about the Persian world, will record this of the angarios. There is nothing in the world that travels faster than these Persian couriers. He will also write, "Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness of night prevents these couriers from completing their appointed course with the utmost speed." He is right. The road runs 2,699 kilometers, 111 stations, 9 days from end to end, if the couriers are good and the weather holds and the horses are sound. You run the middle section, from Susa west to the Halys River, which divides Cappadocia from the Lydian heartland. That is your leg. You know every stone of it. You know the parasang markers along the road edge, and which ones lean and which ones were replaced last year. You know the station masters by name and by the specific ways they run their stations, by which ones check your seal when you arrive and which ones have stopped doing that because you have been here 41 times and they know you are the kind of person who does not need to be checked. And now, in the hour before dawn, in the relay station on the western edge of Susa, a station master is about to hand you a sealed pouch, and you are going to take it, and you are going to run. The station smells of hay and horse sweat and the cooking fire that has been burning since midnight. Someone keeps a small amount of cedar resin burning in a clay dish near the entrance. Not enough to cover anything, just enough to give the air a direction, a small assertion of intention in a space that is otherwise purely functional. You have noticed this same practice at 3 other stations along this road. You do not know if it is coincidence or instruction. You have never asked. You are sitting on a low wooden bench, lacing your riding boots. The leather is stiff in the pre-dawn cold, the cold that lives specifically in the hour before the sun changes anything. Your hands work through it by feel. Left boot, 2-hole crossing at the ankle, the upper lace doubled to prevent loosening in the stirrup. Right boot, the same sequence. You have done this so many times that your hands know the movements without input from your eyes, the way a scribe's hand knows the shape of a sign it has made 10,000 times. There are 2 other couriers in the room. One is a man named Pharnaces, who runs the Susa to Arbela leg eastward, and who is asleep on his mat, with his arm across his face, in the particular way of someone who came in late and is squeezing every last minute from the dark. He came in after midnight from a hard run through rain and will not move for another 4 hours. The other is a young man newly assigned to the Western Road, maybe 18 years old, who keeps reaching down to check the buckle on his empty pouch. He does not have an assignment yet. He is waiting for one. The checking of the buckle is the only thing his hands can find to do. You do not check your buckle. When you have checked it once, it is checked. The station master comes from the back room carrying a clay tablet wrapped in oiled leather, sealed at the seam with a clear wax impression bearing the mark of the royal treasury. You stand. He does not hand it to you immediately. He holds it at eye level and reads the log entry first, which is procedure. The origin station, the date the tablet was sealed, the seal verification number, the destination. You listen to each piece. You are not permitted to write any of this down. Couriers do not carry writing materials because writing materials can fall into the wrong hands and can be read, and what you carry is sealed precisely so it cannot be read. You carry the log information in your memory instead. The seal number is 4, pressed in the lower left corner of the wax. The destination is the administrative office at Sardis, addressed to the secretary of the satrap. The origin is the treasury at Persepolis, 2 days behind you on the eastern road, which means this tablet was cut and sealed 2 days ago and has been moving west ever since, passing through the hands of 2 angarios before yours, each one carrying it for a day's ride and handing it forward. You take the pouch. Through the leather you feel the weight of the tablet. Thin, light, a single piece of fired clay rather than a bundle. One message, not an order for troop movements then, which come in bundles. Something else. You have learned not to wonder what. The station master makes a mark in his ledger. He looks at you. You look back. 3 seconds of held eye contact. The silent acknowledgement that the transfer has occurred, that you have received what was given, that the responsibility has passed from his record to yours. You go outside. The horse is ready. She is a gray mare, compact and deep-chested, with the particular stillness of an animal that has been well trained and still does not entirely trust mornings. A stable boy holds her bridle while she shifts her weight from one foreleg to the other, the small rhythmic movement that means she is ready and has been ready and would prefer to be going already. You check the saddle girth. You tighten it a quarter turn. The boy has already checked it. You both know this. You check it anyway. Some things are worth doing twice, not because the first time was insufficient, but because the second time confirms that the first time was enough, and that confirmation has value. You check the breast strap. You check the way the pouch sits against your body, tucked under your left arm, inside the riding coat. You can feel its weight there, slight, specific, already beginning to be absorbed into the ordinary definition of how you feel. By the second day, it will not feel like a weight at all. It will feel like part of you. You mount. The mare moves immediately, stepping sideways and tossing her head in the way of a horse that has been standing still for too long and is not interested in standing still any longer. You give her nothing to resist, and she settles into a straight line within 10 meters. You turn her west through the station gate and onto the road, and the sound of the station, the fire, the voices, the horses in their stalls, drops behind you in a few seconds, and then there is only the road and the dark and the sound of her hooves on packed clay. The road in this section is gravel and clay, the surface the engineers laid when Darius rebuilt the Susa approach to the route. At the margins, stone edging marks the boundary. Not carved or decorative, just the mark of builders who understood that a road without defined edges is a road that slowly becomes the land it sits on. The markers keep the road the road. You bring the mare to a trot to let her find her warmth, and then to a canter, and you feel her length and rhythm under you, how she moves through the right foreleg, how she breathes into the pace, where she is loose and where she is slightly short. She is good. The Susa station has the best grooms on the western leg. They know what a courier needs from a horse, and they select and condition their animals accordingly, and the animals they produce are consistently better than several of the highland stations further west, where the procurement is more difficult. The city of Susa drops behind you. You do not look back. Susa is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. People have been living at this river confluence, where the Choaspes and the Shower join the Karka, for nearly 5,000 years before the day you are riding away from it. It is the winter administrative capital of the empire, the city where Darius built his great Apadana, the columned audience hall where he receives the tribute delegations from 23 nations each spring. The columns of the Apadana are 60 feet tall, the tallest wooden columns in the world, topped with the bullhead capitals that you saw every day during your 2 years of training at the station. The palace complex is built on a raised terrace of fired brick, the same material the Mesopotamian builders have used for thousands of years, because in this part of the world stone is scarce and clay is everywhere, and fired clay becomes something close to stone if you fire it correctly and you know what you are doing. The craftsmen who built the Apadana were brought from everywhere in the empire. The Persians say this not as a boast, but as a statement of administrative fact. The cedars came from Lebanon, the gold came from Lydia and Bactria, the stone for the column bases came from Elam, the craftsmen who carved the stone came from Ionia, the workers who made the bricks came from Babylon. The fortification tablets record all of it, the wages of carpenters from Lycia, the rations of stone polishers from Sardis, the daily provisions for Egyptian craftsmen, everything recorded in clay, everything managed from the center. You are past all of it before the light is strong enough to see it. The road runs west through the flat alluvial plain of Elam, fields of barley and emmer wheat on both sides, the shapes of date palms along the irrigation ditch margins, visible only as slightly darker shapes against the dark sky. These fields have been planted and harvested here for longer than anyone's memory, channeled by ditches that run ruler straight from the river network to the field edges, maintained by farming families whose relationship with this particular piece of ground goes back in some cases 15 or 20 generations. They will still be here when the empire is not. The sound of your horse's hooves changes as the pre-dawn light begins to build. On the clay surface of the plain approach, the sound is muffled, almost soft. Later, on the stone sections of the Highland Road, it will ring. You know this road by its sounds as well as by its surfaces, and the sounds tell you where you are even before the landmarks appear. By the time the sun is fully up, you are 2 hours west of Susa, moving at the sustainable canter that will carry you through the day. Not the fastest pace the mare can produce, and not the slowest she can sustain. The middle thing, the pace that eats distance without consuming the animal. The pace that arrives at the next station with something left over, rather than arriving spent. Every angarios finds this pace differently, through months of calibration between their own judgment and the horse's response. Yours took 6 months to settle. Your first station master called it economical and told you to keep it. Your third station master called it too slow and told you to push harder. You pushed harder for 3 days and arrived at 2 stations late because the horses ran out of pace before the distance ran out. And after that, you went back to your own judgment and have kept it. The plain opens around you. The early light comes from behind, from the east, and it lays itself flat across the landscape and makes everything look longer and more level than it already is. In this light, on a clear morning on the Mesopotamian plain, you can sometimes see 20 parasangs ahead without obstruction, the road drawn out before you like a ruled line, disappearing not because anything blocks it, but because distance itself eventually swallows even the straightest thing. You press on through the morning. The first station exchange of the day happens before the heat arrives, which is where you want it. The station sits at the edge of a small settlement, a cluster of mud brick buildings around a well, the kind of town that exists because the road exists, that would have been in a slightly different location, or possibly not existed at all if the road had been laid 50 kilometers north or south. A market is beginning to open at the road's edge as you ride in, sellers spreading dried figs and onions and bronze pins and small clay oil lamps on mats. An older woman balancing a water jar on her head stops and watches you pass with the specific blankness of someone who has watched couriers pass this spot for years and finds it neither interesting nor uninteresting. The station itself is behind the settlement, separated by a low wall. You hear the horses before you see them, that particular collective sound of stabled animals in the morning, the movement of large bodies and the percussion of hooves on packed earth. The station master here is a Babylonian named Idina Bel, compact and precise, 7 years at this post. He runs his station with a thoroughness you have come to depend on. The horses are always conditioned. The ledger is always current. The rations are prepared before you arrive, and there is never any uncertainty about which horse is assigned to the Western courier. Idina Bel has probably forgotten more about the logistics of relay operations than most station masters have ever known. You have never told him this. You tell station masters nothing except what the road reports require. He is already in the yard when you ride in, standing beside a brown gelding that is saddled and ready, his ledger open in the crook of his arm. The gelding is watching you arrive with the ears forward attention of a horse that has been told, in the language of preparation, that something is about to happen. You dismount before the mare has fully stopped. Your feet hit the ground, already moving to the gelding's side. Your hands run the girth check. Left side, tighten or hold. Right side, breast strap, buckle. The same sequence every time, taking the same amount of time every time. The mare is handed off to a groom who appears from the side of the yard. You do not see what happens to her after that. You are already on the gelding. 13 seconds from dismount to mounted. A good time is 8. This is not a good time, but it is not a bad time, and Idina Bel says nothing when he makes his mark in the ledger, which means nothing needs to be said. You move out of the yard and onto the road, and the gelding straightens into the pace, and you are going again. He is younger than the mare, with a nervous energy that is not quite confidence, an aliveness in his movement that needs direction rather than encouragement. You give it direction. Within a kilometer, he has settled into the sustainable canter, and the nervous energy has resolved into forward momentum, which is all you need from it. The road runs northwest, following the curve of the Mesopotamian plain toward the Tigris. The land here is flat in a way that land rarely is, truly, completely flat. The flatness of the ancient seabed this whole plain once was, the flatness that makes the horizon seem to be the only boundary in the world and the sky enormous above it. The people who built great cities in this plain built them as tall as they could, tower upon tower, ziggurat upon ziggurat, just to have something vertical to look at. You understand the impulse more each time you cross this stretch. You pass a caravan heading east. It is a large one. You count 32 camels loaded with bales wrapped in oiled canvas, and a number of men walking alongside in the dust, heads down into the pace of a long march, and 3 men on horseback at the head and rear of the column. The horsemen look at you as you close with them and pass them. You look back. Nothing is exchanged. The camel drivers glance up briefly from under their head coverings and return to the interior distance that men on long marches occupy. The camels smell of lanolin and dung, and the particular dry, warm smell of working animals in morning air. And then the smell is behind you, and the caravan is behind you, and you are moving at a pace they will not match in a week. You have made the calculation before. That caravan left wherever it started perhaps 2 months ago. It will arrive wherever it is going perhaps 2 months from now. In the time between those events, you will have carried a dozen messages in both directions along this road. The caravan master and you occupy the same empire, breathe the same air, eat food grown in the same fields, and the empire has decided by the structure of how it operates that the speed of information matters more than almost anything else it can move. The road serves both of you, but it was built for you. By midday, the heat is serious. Serious heat on the Mesopotamian plain in late spring is a physical presence, not just warmth, but weight, pressing from above and rising from the pale road surface simultaneously, so that you are surrounded by it from both directions at once. The air shimmers at distance. The dust you raise hangs behind you in the still air for longer than it should before settling. The shadows have pulled back under the objects that cast them as the sun reaches its height, and the landscape loses the depth that shadows give it, and becomes for an hour or two almost two-dimensional, flat light on flat land. You have a water skin. You drink a measured third of it now, without stopping. This is a technique that took 6 months to develop properly. The coordination of the water skin, and the reins, and the movement of the horse, and the throat's resistance to small amounts when it wants large ones. You have trained yourself to want small amounts. Your thirst has been taught to register the ration as sufficient, because it has no choice, and because the alternative, drinking too much too early and arriving at the next station with nothing, is worse than all versions of thirst. The plain in this heat is the same plain the Babylonian astronomers have been watching for centuries. They know the sky above this flat land better than anyone in the world, because this flat land gives you an unobstructed view in all directions, and the astronomers had nothing to do in the long nights between their observations, except make their observations more precise. They recorded the movements of the planets and the appearances of comets on clay tablets in the same script that records your father's wages and your own assignment logs. The tablets still exist. They will exist long after the astronomers are dead, and the empire is changed and the road is something different. The heat does not reach the tablets. You press on. The sound of your horse's hooves on the packed road surface is the primary sound of the afternoon. On the clay sections it is muffled, almost soft, a rhythmic compression that your body has absorbed into the background of its attention. On the sections where the road surface is gravel, it is lighter, faster, a different texture of sound. You know which surfaces are coming before they arrive, the way you know which grades are coming and which stations and which stone markers. You know this road. The gelding is beginning to tire. You feel it in the slight shortening of his stride, the incremental deepening of the effort in his breathing, the small drop in his head carriage that means he is drawing on reserve rather than surplus. He is not spent, he is working. Working horses speak through their movement, and you have learned to listen at the level where the changes are small enough to act on before they become large. You shift your weight fractionally forward in the saddle, loading the forehand, giving the hindquarters a fraction of relief. It is not dramatic. It is the kind of adjustment that takes 10 years of riding to understand and a second to make. The Tigris crossing comes in mid-afternoon. The river is broad and brown and moving with a speed that is not apparent from the bank, but becomes very apparent the moment you are on the water. The road ends at a ferry crossing, a wide, flat-bottomed boat, large enough for 2 horses and their riders, pulled across on a rope anchored to stone pillars on both banks. The pillars are Darius's work, cut stone, mortared, anchored below the waterline, with a thoroughness that will survive the spring floods for the foreseeable future, and probably beyond. The rope is replaced each spring. The pillars will outlast the replacement schedule by centuries. The ferryman is an old man who has been operating this crossing for as long as the station masters on either bank can remember. He does not speak unless he needs to. He takes the small silver coin the relay system provides couriers for exactly this purpose. A darik, the gold equivalent coin introduced by Darius to standardize exchange across 23 nations, though yours is silver and smaller. And he pulls you across the Tigris in silence, with the pure mechanical rhythm of a man whose work exists so far below the level of conscious decision that he might as well be the river itself. The gelding does not like the water. He stands on the ferry with his legs braced and his head high and his nostrils working, taking in the smell of river water and mud and the way sound moves differently over a flat surface, and you sit still above him and let him feel the solidity of the boards beneath his feet and the slow crossing motion and the arrival at the far bank, and when you move up onto solid ground he shakes himself once, a full-body rejection of the experience, and then he moves out of it and forward and into the next kilometer, as if it had not happened. You are now in what was once the heartland of the Assyrian Empire. This is not just geography. 60 years ago, before Cyrus the Great built the first version of what Darius has now perfected, this land was governed from Nineveh and Ashur and Nimrud, 3 cities that ruled the known world for 300 years, that built hanging gardens and libraries, that moved conquered peoples across the landscape as deliberately as farmers move crops, using displacement as a tool of control in a way that the Persians look at and recognize as effective and reject as unnecessary. The Assyrians moved peoples. The Persians move information. The results are different. You are part of the mechanism of information. You carry the king's word faster than the king's armies. You are, in a very specific sense, more powerful than a soldier, because a soldier carries force, and force can only go where it is pointed. But a message can say go here, and a message can say stop, and a message can say the situation has changed and respond accordingly. and the soldier who receives the message can change what he is doing in a way that force itself cannot. This is not why you took this job. You took this job because you were 16 and it was not cutting stone. But you have been thinking about it for 3 years, in the hours on the road when there is nothing to do but think, and this is where the thinking has arrived. You cross the afternoon on the gelding, who has settled into a pace that is a little slower than the morning pace, but still within the range of what the distance requires, and the landscape around you flattens again after the slight texture of the Tigris bank, and becomes the deep Mesopotamian plain once more, the black soil fields and the date palms and the irrigation ditches running their ruler lines to the horizon. The second station of the day is on the western side of a slight rise in the plain. Barely a rise at all, barely enough to be visible, but enough to give the station a slight advantage of drainage and visibility and wind. The station master here is a woman, which surprised you the first time. It does not surprise you now. She has been at this post for 3 years, and the horses she maintains are better than several nearby stations, and the ledger she keeps is precise to a degree that some of the male station masters do not match. She notes your arrival time. You are 11 minutes ahead of standard. You eat. The station provides the standard traveling ration for royal couriers: flatbread, dried figs, pressed date paste, a portion of salted meat, the fortification tablets at Persepolis, those same tablets that contain your father's wages, would record this entry as completely routine. 1 courier, Western Road, standard provision, outbound. The Empire feeds its riders the same way it measures their performance, precisely, without sentiment. You eat without tasting anything, which is not indifference, but the specific focus of someone who has already decided that taste is not what this is for. Then you sleep. 4 hours. The reed mat is thin over the packed dirt floor of the relay room, and the station has its sounds around you. Horses shifting, a guard's footsteps on the outer wall. Somewhere beyond the wall a dog, the small collapses of the fire settling. None of it keeps you awake. You have learned to sleep inside the sounds of stations the way you have learned to eat without tasting, by deciding that these things serve the work, and that the work is what matters, and letting the rest organize itself accordingly. You are asleep before you have formed the complete thought that you should be. The second day begins in the dark and in the cold. Your body wakes before the station master calls you. 3 years of this road has calibrated something in you that runs below conscious thought, an internal counter that knows how many hours have passed, and whether the 4 are used and whether it is time to move. It is correct this morning, as it is almost always correct. You lace your boots in the dark by feel, stand, check nothing because everything is ready, and go outside. The stars are still visible. The eastern horizon has the first suggestion of gray, not light yet, but the first loss of the deepest dark, the announcement of what is coming. The road runs west-northwest in the last dark, pale enough to see if you know where to look. The first station of the day is roughly a parasang past a ruined watchtower that will be visible from the road once the light comes up, and the second station is past the point where the road begins to climb. Today the road climbs. You have been moving through the flat world of Mesopotamia since Susa. That phase of the journey ends today. The land ahead rises toward the foothills that eventually become the mountains of Anatolia. Not mountains yet, not even close, but the beginning of rise, the land gaining elevation and a different quality of stone underfoot and a different color in the soil. The road engineers who surveyed this section had to make choices that their colleagues on the plain did not have to make. Grades, switchbacks, the placement of stations at points where water exists above the plain. Because in the highlands, water does not simply appear in the soil the way it does where the rivers of Mesopotamia have been depositing silt for 10,000 years. The horse this morning is a compact bay, older, with the particular economy of movement that comes from years of running the same stretch of road. He knows the distances, he is not dramatic about them. He moves into the morning pace without theatrics. You carry the pouch against your left side, inside the coat, the leather warm against your shirt from the night. The clay tablet is still inside. The seal has not been touched. You do not check this. A courier who needs to check the seal each morning is a courier who has not yet understood that the seal is not a source of uncertainty. It is either there or it is not, and if it is not, you would know, and if it is, checking it adds nothing. The ruins of Nineveh are to your north. You will not see them from the road, but you know they are there. A few hours' ride north of the main route, the great mounds of the Assyrian capital, the city that was the largest in the world less than 200 years ago, and is now a place where farmers graze animals on the grass that has grown over the rubble. Nineveh had at its height perhaps 100,000 inhabitants, surrounded by walls wide enough to drive a chariot along the top, decorated with carved stone reliefs showing the hunting expeditions and military campaigns of kings who ruled the world and expected to rule it forever. The Babylonians and the Medes burned it in 612 BCE, and the burning was thorough enough that nothing meaningful has been rebuilt. You pass through the air above that history every time you run this road. You have never stopped to look at it. There is no stop for looking. The sun rises, the day is clear. The first station of the morning is at a well-watered point where a small stream crosses under the road through a stone culvert, one of hundreds of such culverts built or rebuilt under Darius's improvements to the road system. The culvert is not a dramatic thing. It is a low stone arch, wide enough for the stream, designed so that the road surface is dry regardless of the season and the stream continues regardless of the road. Without it, the stream would cut the road surface away each winter, and the road would need constant repair at this point and would sometimes be impassable. With it, the road is the road. The station master here is young and has been at this post less than a year. He checks your pouch seal when you arrive, which you understand. New station masters check everything until they decide what can be trusted. You are patient about it. You were new once. The horse he gives you is good, a chestnut mare with a loose, ground-covering walk that tells you the canter will be comfortable. The walk is the most honest thing about a horse. It tells you how the rest of the gaits are organized. You are back on the road in 14 seconds. Not a personal best here, but within range. The road begins to rise. The grade is gentle at first, the engineers having chosen their line to minimize the steepness, following the contour of the land wherever the land permitted it. But the rise is real, and your body notices it as the horse's breathing deepens and the character of the effort changes. Uphill is a different conversation than flat. Everything costs a little more and pays back a little less, and you adjust your pace accordingly, not dramatically, not a different gear entirely, but a fraction of reserve held back that the flat ground did not require. The landscape around you is changing with the elevation. The black alluvial soil of the Mesopotamian plain has been giving way over the past day's riding to something more complex. Soils of red and ochre and gray-brown, rocky outcroppings beginning to appear above the ridgelines, the vegetation shifting from the irrigated barley fields and date palms of the plain to something drier and more scattered. Scrub oak on the slopes above the road, thorny bushes whose name you do not know in your own language, let alone in the languages of the people who live among them. Patches of wiry grass between the stones themselves larger and more angular, less worn, less patient. The sky is clear, but to the northwest, above the next line of ridges, there is a quality of light you have learned to pay attention to, a flatness behind the blue, a brightness that is not quite the brightness of direct sun, but something behind it, something diffused, the way the sky looks when there is a great deal of water vapor moving from the west. This may be nothing, this may be rain by afternoon. You note it and keep moving. Around mid-morning, on a long straight section of the road between two ridges, you see another courier. He is coming east, riding hard, and you see him first as a small dark shape at the far end of the straight, growing as the distance between you closes. You can tell from his posture, the specific balance, the particular way the weight sits in the saddle, the controlled economy of the pace, that he is on the royal road. An ordinary rider does not sit like that. An ordinary rider does not have a reason to. You meet him at the midpoint, both of you slow to a walk. This is courtesy and also procedure. Couriers moving in opposite directions exchange brief information at chance meetings on the road. Weather conditions, road surfaces, anything worth passing. The exchange takes as long as it takes, and not longer. He is older than you, his face cured by years in the sun and wind of this road. His horse is tired in a way that tells you he started early or started hard or both. He says without preamble in Persian. The road past the Haley's crossing was soft from rain last week. Eastern bank is passable, but take the lower ford if you use the ford. Upper ford has a loose stone under the surface on the left side. He gestures without looking. Left side, under the surface. You say, storm coming your direction, probably afternoon. He nods once. Then you are past each other, and neither of you looks back, and that is everything that needed to be said. The information is passed. It will move east on his horse and west on yours, and somewhere it will be useful, and that is the point of it. The storm arrives in the early afternoon. You have been watching it build for 2 hours, the flatness on the northwestern horizon deepening and darkening as you ride toward it. The clouds that were suggestions becoming masses with visible structure, the quality of the air changing in a way that is not yet rain but is no longer entirely dry. There is a charged stillness. The horses at the midday station are circling in the paddock when you arrive for the exchange, which tells you the weather is closer than the sky currently shows. You are back on the road when the rain begins. It starts as drops widely spaced and large, each one individually felt through your riding coat, one on the shoulder, one on the back of the hand, one on the road surface ahead of you, leaving a dark coin-sized mark against the pale gray-brown. Then the spacing closes and the drops multiply, and within the distance of a quarter parasang you are in it fully, the rain driving in from the northwest with a wind that is not violent but is real, that does not stop you, but that you have to move through rather than simply move forward. You do not stop. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness of night. This is not a slogan. It is a description of what the angarios were built to do, through selection and training, and 3 years of learning that your body can do more than your judgment initially believed. You are a person who does not stop for rain. You made this decision so long ago and so thoroughly that it is no longer a decision. It is simply a fact about who you are. The road surface in the highlands is better than the plain section for rain. Flat stones set close together over packed gravel, which drains faster than clay. The drainage channels along both road edges fill and run and carry the water away from the surface. The road sheds rain the way it was designed to shed rain. It does not become mud. It remains the road. Your coat absorbs water until it reaches capacity, and then the water comes through, and by that point you will be at the next station, and there will be dry things, or there will not be, and either way you will keep moving. You have been wet before. You have been wetter than this. You bend slightly forward into the wind. The landscape in rain is different from the landscape in sun in ways that go beyond the obvious. The colors deepen, the distances contract. The ridge lines above you become more distinct, their outlines sharpened by the moisture in the air, and the valleys below them fill with a gray-white haze that is part low cloud and part evaporation from the warm ground. The stones in the road are darker and their edges harder. The scrub oak on the slopes above is a deeper green, almost black. If you were not carrying what you are carrying, this might be something close to beautiful. The storm passes in an hour. Highland weather, fast and complete and finished. The clouds clear to the west, and the late afternoon sun comes through with the particular clarity that follows rain. The air scoured, the distances restored, everything with an edge on it that was soft before. The road steams faintly in the renewed warmth. The wet road surface has a different sound under the hooves, a slightly softer register, the stone having absorbed the surface water, the gravel between the stones darker and more compact. Your coat has gone through its cycle, absorbed, saturated, and now, in the renewed sun, beginning to dry from the outside in, which means the outer layer is stiffening even as the inner layer is still damp. This is a familiar sensation. You have been rained on and dried out on this road often enough that the specific sequence of the feeling has become its own kind of comfort. It means the storm is done. It means you are still moving. It means everything is proceeding as it proceeds. The mountains to the north are visible again after the hour of cloud. The high ridgelines have a line of fresh white on them, not snow from before, but precipitation that fell as snow at that elevation, while it fell as rain down here. In a few days, in a week, the snow line will climb back up as the season reasserts itself, and the fresh white will fade, and the ridgeline will be the same ochre brown it was before. You will see it on the next run, if the next run is soon, and you will notice the difference, because you notice this mountain the way you notice all the regular things on this road, not as beauty or as information exactly, but as confirmation that the world continues to be what it is. You ride through the last section of the climb to the third station of the day. It is built into the lee of a rock face, sheltered from the western weather by the slope above it. Thick stone walls, stone roof. The whole structure has the heavy permanence of something built knowing it would need to outlast conditions worse than today. built by people who had been on this road through winters that the plain stations have never experienced and who built accordingly. It is smaller than the lowland stations. It has fewer horses and a more limited ration. But it is solid in the particular way that highland things learn to be solid, through necessity rather than choice. The station master is a Phrygian man who speaks Persian with the accent of someone who learned it in adulthood and has made peace with that fact. He is thorough. His ledger is current. The horse he shows you for tomorrow morning is a good gray with calm eyes. You eat, you sleep. The rain drums briefly on the stone roof in the night and then stops. In the silence after the rain, the only sounds are the wind through the mountain pass above the station and the horses breathing in the stable next door and the fire settling in the pit as the coals work down through the night. The Phrygian station master has left a small lamp burning near the door of the relay room, oil with a twisted wick that produces a very steady small flame, the kind of flame that does not move unless something moves it. You watched it for a moment before you lay down. It is still burning. You can see it through the inside of your eyelids as a faint warmth, a glow in the direction of the door. You sleep inside all of it, the way you have learned to sleep, completely, without negotiation, using the 4 hours the way your body uses everything on this road, without waste. On the third day, the world changes. You have felt it coming since yesterday, the quality of the light, the dryness of the air, the way the stone beneath the road's surface shifts from the dark limestone of the Assyrian foothills to something lighter and more ochre. But today, once you have crossed the highest point of the pass, and the road begins its long descent onto the Anatolian plateau, the change completes itself all at once. The landscape opens. In Mesopotamia, the world is horizontal. The land asserts itself through sheer extent, through the flatness that makes the horizon the only boundary. Here, on the plateau, the world is both horizontal and vertical. Great flat stretches of high grassland, interrupted by sudden rocky outcroppings, by the deep cuts of river valleys, by mountains in the middle distance with snow on them still in late spring. White caps against the brownish gray of the plateau surface. The distances here are a different quality of distance. The sky is wider. The shadows are longer. The air is drier, thinner, cooler even now, even this late in the season. Your lungs notice the elevation. The horse this morning is a Nisaean, one of the large, deep-chested horses bred on the Nisaean plain in Media that the Persian royal stables favor above all others for cavalry and courier work. These are the horses that some Greek writers call the sacred horses of the sun. They are not sacred. They are simply very good horses, bred over generations for the specific qualities that this work requires. Sustained pace over long distance, good wind, a temperament that accepts the unfamiliar without spending energy on it. You feel the difference from the first stride, the length of the movement, the way the road seems to pass beneath you faster without any change in your visible pace, the quality of the contact between his feet and the ground, which is unhurried and precise and somehow communicates confidence in the surface it is touching. A good horse is not invisible beneath you. A good horse is part of what you are, for as long as you are on him. This is the Lydian satrapy. Less than 50 years ago, this land belonged to a different king, Croesus, the last king of Lydia, the man whose name became in the Greek language a metaphor for incomprehensible wealth. ruled from Sardis until Cyrus the Great defeated him in 547 BCE and took his kingdom and his treasury and his court, and reduced him from a king to a story that the Persians tell with varying degrees of sympathy depending on who is telling it. The Lydians were the first people in the Western world to mint coins in a standard weight and fineness. Not Darius, not the Greeks, but the Lydians, whose gold and silver electrum coins from a century ago are still in circulation in some markets, because the standard they set was reliable enough to outlast the kingdom that set it. The road you are riding was Lydian before it was Persian. The stone markers at the road edge were placed by Lydian engineers. The route through the passes, the water points, the bridge foundations, the locations of the settlements that grew up along the way, all of this existed before the angarium. The Persians improved it. They paved sections that were unpaved, built permanent bridges, standardized the station intervals. But the road was here. It is always here, regardless of who claims it. You pass a small Phrygian village set back from the road by perhaps 200 meters. Mud brick houses with flat roofs, a well at the center, goats on the slope above. The houses are old, you can tell by the way the mud brick has weathered at the corners and the way the additions to the original structures have been built in slightly different materials as the generations added what they needed. A group of women are carrying water jars from the well toward the houses, and they stop to watch you pass with the particular quality of watching that is neither hostile nor welcoming but simply observational. A courier on the royal road, moving through their morning at a speed their morning will never match. They know what you are, not who you are, not your name, not where you are from, not what is in the pouch against your side, but what you are. A royal courier on the road means the empire is communicating with someone to the west. To the people of this village, that is weather. It comes and goes. The village was here before the empire claimed this road, and will be here after. The station exchanges through the morning are the smoothest of the journey. This is the section where your road knowledge is deepest. You have run it more than 40 times. The station masters know your arrival pace and have learned what they can expect from it. At the second station of the morning, the ledger is open and the horse is saddled and the ration is already set on the bench before you arrive, because the station master timed your approach from previous runs and was right within 2 minutes. You eat the flatbread on horseback, moving. The figs follow, the water skin at the midpoint of the leg. Your body runs on this schedule without complaint because this schedule has been its schedule for 3 years, and the body that has adapted to a thing stops registering the adaptation as adaptation and starts registering it as simply how things are. The road in this section passes through a landscape that is in the process of becoming something different from what it was. Before the Persians, this was the heart of Lydian wealth, not just the wealth of Croesus, though that was real. The gold-bearing sands of the river Pactolus actually ran through Sardis, and the Lydians actually panned them, and the treasury at Sardis was genuinely full when Cyrus took it. But a deeper, more distributed wealth, the wealth of a civilization that had been managing this landscape long enough to accumulate the knowledge of how to do it well. The Lydians knew where the water was in drought years. They knew the grazing routes. They knew which passes were crossable in winter and which were not, and they built their roads accordingly. The Persians came and the Lydians became subjects, and the Lydian roads became Persian roads, and the Lydian knowledge was incorporated into Persian administration. through the medium of local staff hired into the satrapy offices, who know things about this land that the governors sent from Persepolis will never know if they do not ask. You pass the ruined foundation of what was a Lydian way station, visible from the road as a low rectangle of stone almost swallowed by the plateau grass. A Lydian station built to different specifications than the Persian ones, positioned at a point that the Lydian road engineers calculated differently than the Persian engineers would have. The road has been here longer than the empire that now claims it. The road will probably be here after the empire is done with it. You ride past without stopping. The Cappadocian section of the plateau is where the road earns its reputation. The terrain here is not hostile exactly. It is unforgiving in the way that high, arid ground is unforgiving. No shade in the open stretches, surfaces that reflect heat even in late spring, sudden winds off the plateau edge that have had nothing to slow them for hundreds of kilometers and arrive at your back or your face with a completeness that feels like a physical opinion. But the road surface here is the finest section of the entire route. Flat stones bedded in gravel, with drainage channels along both edges, maintained by the road corps that Darius employs specifically to keep this section in condition, because this is the section the army uses when it needs to move west. You can feel the quality of the construction in the Niceans' footfalls, a solidity, a reliability. The road does not give under pressure. It does not shift. In 30 years, in 50 years, this section will be exactly as it is now. The Persian engineers who built it understood permanence in stone, the way the engineers of Mesopotamia understand permanence in fired clay, as a commitment, not a hope. By early afternoon you can see the Hales. It reveals itself as a quality of the light before it reveals itself as water, a brightness at the western horizon too low and too constant to be sky, a silver quality that tells you water is there before the topography allows you to see the course. The Hales is the longest river in Anatolia, running in a great arc from the mountains of the east and the north through the plateau before turning west toward the sea. It marks the boundary between Cappadocia and the old Lydian heartland. It is the boundary of your leg. East of the Hales, Cappadocia, Matiene, Assyria, Mesopotamia, Persia, your world. West of the Hales, Gordian, Old Phrygia, and beyond it, Sardis. You are not going west of the Hales. Your assignment ends at the relay station on the eastern bank. You will hand the pouch to the courier who runs the Hales to Sardis section, and he will carry what you have carried for 3 days through the western plateau to the satrap's office. You will never see him do it. You will never know if he does it in 8 days or 9, if he has trouble at the Gordian checkpoint or sails through, if the satrap's secretary opens the tablet immediately or sets it aside. You carry the message to the river. The river carries nothing. Someone else carries the message from the river. The Hales, when you reach it, is running high from the spring snowmelt. Not dangerously, the ferry is operating, but with a volume and speed that makes the surface turbid and brown, carrying soil from the distant mountains in suspension. You remember what the eastbound courier told you 2 mornings ago. Lower ford, not the upper. Loose stone on the left side of the upper ford, under the surface. The ferry here is larger than the Tigris crossing, wide enough for 4 horses, heavy enough to be stable in a fast current, with 2 ferrymen working the rope between them. The western courier is waiting on the eastern bank. He is sitting on a flat stone with his hands loose on his knees, and the practiced stillness of someone who has learned to rest completely in the gaps between efforts rather than merely waiting through them. You know him, not well. His name is Cyaxares, a Median name which tells you something about his family's origins, and he has been running the Hales to Sardis leg for 2 years. He stands when you dismount. You tell him about the lower ford. He tells you the loose stone has been there a month and that the road past Gordian has garrison traffic this week. Nothing hostile, but checkpoint delays are possible. You note the garrison information for the return. He notes the ford information for the outbound. Then you hand him the pouch. Ledger entry, eye contact, 3 seconds. He takes the weight and you feel the absence of it. This is always the moment you notice. You have carried that pouch for 3 days. In that time, it has been against your body every waking hour, its specific weight absorbed into the definition of how you feel, such that not having it is a physical event with a distinct register, not unpleasant, simply present, the way a room is different when the fire goes out, not worse necessarily, just different in a way that your body reads immediately. He mounts and crosses on the ferry. You watch him reach the western bank and move into the western road and continue until the road takes him around a slight curve and out of sight. Then you turn east. You ride east. The same road, the same surface, the same distances, the same relay stations at the same intervals, and yet different in every direction. Because the direction is reversed, and the direction changes everything. The light falls from a different angle. The wind, which was mostly at your back coming west, is now mostly in your face. The grades that were gradual descents become gradual climbs, and the slopes you rode hard going down now slow you on the way up, and the ones that slowed you going up are the easy parts of the return. And the urgency is different. Coming west, you carry the king's voice. The pouch determines the pace. Every parasang between you and the destination is a parasang between the king and his answer, and you carry that weight even when it has stopped feeling like weight. Going east, empty-handed, you are a courier returning to his station. There is a standard return pace, and it is not slow. But it does not have the particular edge the outbound carries. The edge that is not anxiety but is related to anxiety. The edge of a thing that matters. Your body knows this. After 3 days of outbound tension, the first hour of the return has a quality of release in it. Not slack. You are still moving at the correct pace, still making the exchanges on schedule, still delivering the Gordian garrison information east at each station the way Cyaxares asked. But something in the quality of your attention has shifted, the way attention shifts when you know you have done what you came to do. The plateau in the late afternoon is something you notice more on the return. The low western sun throws long shadows east from every rock and stone marker and blade of grass along the road, and the plateau surface catches this light and holds it, the stones taking on amber and red as the angle of the sun decreases toward the horizon. The wiry plateau grass catches the light at the tips of its stalks and holds it there for the duration of the hour before the light goes, and the scrub oak on the slopes above the road is lit from below by the reflection off the pale stone, and the mountains in the distance are beginning to put on their purple. You have ridden through this light hundreds of times, and you register it the way you register the quality of a horse's walk, as information about the condition of the world that is worth noting, even if you are not sure what to do with it. At the first return station, You deliver the garrison traffic information east, and the station master writes it in the ledger. It will travel east at each station until it reaches someone who needs it. Somewhere it will be useful. The road moves information in both directions simultaneously, west and east. Questions and answers, reports and orders. The Empire talking to itself across 2,699 kilometers of road through the bodies of the people who run it. You eat, you sleep. The night at the first return station is different from the outbound nights. The outbound nights were pure unconsciousness. Lie down, gone, 4 hours used and done. This night has a different texture, a slightly looser version of sleep. The edges of it softer, the transition between waking and sleeping more gradual. Your body is using the rest differently, rebuilding what the 3 outbound days took out. You lie on the reed mat and outside, through the stone wall. The plateau wind is moving with its low, sustained tone, a sound that is not quite music, but has the rhythm of something that has been doing this for a very long time. The cedar resin burns in its small clay dish near the entrance. The same small ceremony you noticed at the Susa station, the same small fire at the Highland station in the rain. Someone at each of these places burns a small amount of resin each evening, not for any ritual purpose, not because anyone told them to, but simply because it makes the room better than it would otherwise be. A small private practice replicated at intervals across the length of the road, each person arriving at it independently, each person deciding independently that it is worth doing. You have been thinking about this on the long stretches of the return ride when there is nothing to look at but the road, and nothing to listen to but the horse and the wind. The road is built on repetition. It is the same stations, the same horses, the same ledger entries, the same seal pressed into the same clay by a different hand each time, but always bearing the same authority. The road functions because it is always the same. The moment it becomes unreliable is the moment it stops being the road and becomes simply a path. And within that repetition, all these small private consistencies, the cedar resin, the ferryman's coin, the way Idina Bell opens his ledger at the exact moment you ride into the yard, the way your own hands find the girth without thinking, the way your body wakes before you are called. The road is built from these repetitions. The empire is built from the road. You are part of the architecture. The fire in the common room settles. The horses breathe in the stable next door. You close your eyes. The second day of the return moves you back across the plateau. You start before dawn, as you always start, in the cold that precedes the light. The gray horse from last night's station is already in the yard, saddled, the stable boy holding the bridle with both hands, because the gray is one of those horses that does not like standing still and does not pretend otherwise. You mount, and he moves immediately, which suits you. A horse that moves when you mount is a horse that has already decided to work. The Cappadocian paving is under you within the first parasang. You feel it in the quality of the footfalls, that solid, even note that the stone gives back, the sound and feel of a surface that does not yield. You rode this paving going west, and you ride it going east, and it is identical in both directions, which is the point of it. The road is not a suggestion, the road is a fact. The parasang markers stand at the road edge at regular intervals. You know every one of them on this section, which ones lean slightly eastward from the prevailing wind, Which one had its top corner broken off last year by a supply wagon that came too close to the edge? Which one stands perfectly plumb and has stood that way since you first ran this road? They were placed by road surveyors who walked this entire route on foot, measuring with a standard cord, placing the markers before the angarium was running, before there were horses at the stations, before anyone had proven that 9 days was possible. Someone walked this road to make it possible for you to ride it, and the Persian markers are what they left behind. You pass each one without slowing. The scrub oak on the slopes above the road is different in the morning light than in the afternoon. In the morning light, the sun comes from behind you and hits the western faces of the oak leaves directly, and the leaves are lighter on the underside than the top. And in this light you can see the individual leaves moving in the plateau wind. In the afternoon, riding west, the sun is in your face and the oak is in shadow. You have never had reason to mention this to anyone. It is simply a fact about the road that lives in you. The first station of the morning is at a point where the road crosses a small seasonal stream, currently dry, its bed a stripe of gray-white stone through the brown grass. The station master here, a man of middle age, whose province of origin you have never determined because his accent in Persian is unlike any accent you recognize, has been at this post for 6 years and runs it with a quiet competence that does not announce itself. He checks your log entry, gives you a horse, makes his mark. You are back on the road in 10 seconds. That is a personal best at this station. He says nothing, you say nothing. The 10 seconds is its own record. The second station of the morning is on the section of the plateau where the wind comes off a gap in the northern ridgeline and crosses the road at a slight angle. It is like this every time you pass this section, both directions, every season. The wind finds the gap and moves through it, and hits the road at the same angle regardless of the calendar. You lean into it the same way every time, and the horse leans into it the same way, and you move through it together. The mountain to your north still has snow on it, even now. A white cap above the gray-brown of the lower slopes, catching the morning sun and holding it. It will be snow-free by midsummer. By the time you run this road again, it may be clear. You have watched this particular mountain change with the season for 3 years, always from the road, always in motion, never having gone closer to it or stopped to look at it from any angle other than the one the road provides. You know it well, and you do not know it at all. This is true of many things on this road. The Cappadocian paving, the highland stations, the scrub oak on the slopes, the Persian markers at the road edge, each one a confirmation of where you are. You know every one of them on this section, which ones lean, which ones were replaced, which one has a crack that has been there since you first ran this road and will be there after you stop. You ride the return road at the pace that is correct for the return, and the road gives back what it gave going west, the distance, the terrain, the sequence of stations in reverse order, and everything is familiar in the way that familiar things become more themselves rather than less, more their own particular character, when you have seen them enough times to stop seeing them as novelties and start seeing them as what they are. At the midday Highland station, the Babylonian station master Idina Bell asks, as he always asks, whether the road surface at the Halys crossing held after the rain last week. You tell him about the lower ford. You tell him about the loose stone. He writes it down. Then he asks something he has not asked before. whether the road's surface on the descent from the pass has washed out anywhere. There was heavy rain, he says, heavier than it looked from the station. A supply train reported a section of gravel displacement on the eastern face of the pass. You tell him the surface looked sound when you came through this morning. He writes this down too. The road corps will be notified. Someone will be sent to check the section and repair it if necessary. And the repair will be recorded. And the recording will go to the road overseer, and the road overseer's report will go to the regional administrator, and the regional administrator's report will eventually reach Persepolis, where someone will read that a section of the Highland Road required repair and will note it and move on to the next item. The road's maintenance runs through this same administrative infrastructure as everything else. The empire that delivers your messages also maintains the surface you deliver them on. Both processes use the same ledgers, the same records, the same chain of report and response. The road and the messages it carries are not two different things. They are both the empire moving. You take the fresh horse and go. The afternoon brings you back to the edge of the highlands, the beginning of the descent to the plain. You ride the descent at the pace your body has found for it, over 41 runs, the pace that keeps the horse in control on the grade, that arrives at the bottom with the horse still working rather than blown, that takes no more out of the day than the day can spare. The Mesopotamian plain meets you at the bottom of the descent like an old conversation. You enter it in the early morning of the third return day, when the light is still low and the fields have not yet warmed, and the quality of the air shifts around you as the elevation drops. Thicker, richer, the smell of water and dark soil and crops in the ground replacing the dry mineral scent of the plateau. The date palms appear, the irrigation ditches running their ruler lines, the absolute horizontal, the horizon that the eye reaches without obstruction and which the eye must simply accept as the boundary of what is visible. Your body runs at the plain pace without being told. The longer stride that flat ground allows, the slightly different balance. The horse, a steady roan from the highland descent station, traded for the Nisaean at the standard point. A horse that knows this section of the road as well as you do, matches the pace without negotiation. The plain in the morning, when you have been in the highlands for days, is startling in its flatness. You have been living in a landscape that imposes itself through height and drop, through the way the ground is always doing something, always climbing or descending or folding into a valley, always requiring your attention. The plain does not require your attention in the same way. The plain simply continues. You have to find your own relationship with it, and the relationship you have found over 3 years is one of a kind of ease, the ease of a landscape that gives you nothing to resist. The barley in the fields is taller than it was when you rode west 3 days ago. Not dramatically taller. 3 days of growth in late spring is perhaps a finger's width, perhaps less, but taller in the way that all growing things are taller by the time you have looked away and looked back. The farmers who manage these fields know the growth rate the way you know the road. They know what 3 days of spring weather adds to a crop of emmer wheat, the way you know what 3 days of riding adds to the distance between Susa and the Halleys. You pass a group of farmers clearing an irrigation ditch of the debris the spring flooding left behind, 5 of them knee-deep in dark water, using long wooden tools to move the accumulated silt and plant matter out of the channel and onto the bank. They have been doing this since before you rode west. Probably it is the season for it. and they will be doing it or something like it long after the season ends and the next season begins. The maintenance of irrigation infrastructure in Mesopotamia is not optional. Let it go for one season and you lose the water. Lose the water and you lose the crop. Lose the crop and 5,000 years of continuous civilization in this particular piece of ground becomes 5,000 years of memories. They do not look up as you pass. The ditch is more interesting than the road. You have your own version of this focus, your own ditch. The road is what you look at. The road and the horse and the distance and the schedule and the seal in the pouch, and now the absence of the seal in the absence of the pouch and the schedule and the distance and the next station. Everything else is peripheral. Everything else passes. The Tigris crossing. The same old ferryman. He takes the coin without ceremony and pulls you across without comment, and you move up onto the far bank, and the horse shakes himself once in the same rejection of the experience that every horse makes at this crossing, and you are past it. On the return crossing, the river looks different from the outbound crossing. The same water, the same ferryman, the same rope, but the light falls differently going east, and the far bank is now the near bank, and the near bank is now the far bank, and you see them from the opposite angle. The Tigris does not care which direction you are crossing. The Tigris has been crossed by more people than can be counted, in both directions, for longer than anyone's historical memory, and it will be crossed by more people after you are done crossing it. You have been thinking on the return rides about what the road means to the people who live beside it. To the satrap in Sardis, the road means the king's voice can reach him in 9 days, and his own voice can return in 9 more. It means he is connected to the center of the empire in a way that a satrap of a pre-Darius era could not have been. It means he cannot pretend the king does not know what he is doing, because the king's inspectors travel this road regularly, and their reports travel it back. To the farmers in the fields beside the plain section, the road means foot traffic and wheel traffic and the occasional benefit of a market that exists because the road brought enough people to the area to make a market viable. It means their grain can reach Susa in the same time frame that the caravan traffic allows. It means the empire's administrative needs occasionally intersect with their own needs in ways that benefit both, and occasionally intersect in ways that benefit only the empire. To the Phrygian village women who watch you pass from the plateau edge, the road means a Nicean horse at a courier's pace moving through their morning once a week or once a month, carrying something important to people far away, changing nothing about the weight of the water jar. To you, the road means this. Your father cut stone so you could run. The stone is in the walls at Persepolis. The running is in the records at Susa. Both of them are permanent in the way that clay tablets are permanent, which is more permanent than most things, but less permanent than the Tigris. The tells rise above the plain. The one with the village on its slopes passes on your right. The barley fields are taller than they were 3 days ago, which is not something you would notice if you were not always on this road, moving in both directions, watching the same fields change in both directions of time. The station exchanges through the afternoon are the ones you have made 41 times going one way and now the same count going the other. The faces are the same faces, the ledgers the same ledgers, the horses familiar in the way that all things become familiar when you pass through them often enough. You deliver the garrison information at each station. You check nothing that does not need checking. You arrive on schedule at each stop. The last station before the city, as the sun reaches its lowest useful angle, gives you the standard ration and the information that a westbound message is being prepared at the treasury for the morning run. This means assignment follows rest by perhaps a day, perhaps two. You note this without particular feeling. Assignment is what follows rest. This is the structure of the work. The last section of road before Susa is one of the busiest sections of the entire route. You feel the density of it as you enter the final approach. More traffic on the road, more people moving in both directions. The road itself wider here in anticipation of the city's demands. Tribute caravans from the eastern provinces converge on Susa from multiple routes. Supply trains for the palace, diplomatic parties from foreign courts, identifiable by the quality of their horses and the formality of their dress. Individual travelers on foot and on donkeys, moving at a pace that has nothing to do with urgency and everything to do with the pace of their own lives. You move through all of it at the courier's pace, which is a different pace than any of theirs. They give way not because they are required to, but because the courier's pace makes itself unmistakable. You are moving with the particular intention of the angarium, which is a visible thing once you know what to look for, and the people of the Susa approach know what to look for. A tribute caravan from Egypt passes on the left, moving east toward the city. You can tell the origin by the dress of the guards, linen, a different cut than the Persian style, and the particular way Egyptian soldiers hold themselves in formation. The caravan has been traveling for months. The animals are tired in the way that animals are tired after months of travel. Not sick, not damaged, simply used up in the specific way that long journeys use things. The handlers walk alongside with the patience of people who have been walking like this for so long that walking like this is simply how they walk. You are past them in 20 seconds. In those 20 seconds, they have watched you close the distance, and pass and open the distance again. And to them you are a shape that appeared and disappeared too fast to memorize. You carry a message from the center of the empire to its western edge, and you are returning having carried it. The Egyptian tribute is a message, too, of a different kind. A physical statement about who controls what, expressed in gold and linen and the labor of trained craftsmen, traveling at the pace of oxen. The two messages are part of the same language. The city appears on the horizon as it always appears. Shimmer first, then shapes, then the great terrace and the columns catching the last light, and the rivers and the sounds of a place that holds more people than you could ride past in a full day at your sustainable canter. You enter it without ceremony. No one watches a courier come home. The station is where it always is. The stable boy takes your horse. The station master makes the mark. Returned. On time. Assignment complete. You sit on the low wooden bench. You unlace your boots. Left boot. The leather is stiff from the days of riding, and your fingers work through it with the patience that has no name other than the patience of repetition, of a thing done so many times that the doing of it is its own sufficient reason. The small knot at the bottom of the lacing takes a moment. Then it gives. The pouch is gone. Cyaxares has it somewhere west of the Hales, running the last section to Sardis at his own sustainable pace, on his own horse, through his own version of this same road. By tomorrow morning he will be past Gordian. By the day after he will be in Sardis, and the satrap's secretary will take the pouch and break the seal, and read what Darius wrote in the treasury at Persepolis however many days ago, and do whatever is asked. None of that has anything to do with you. You did your part. Your part was this road, these stations, this horse, and then this horse, and then this horse. The weight of a clay tablet against your left side for 3 days. The eye contact that means yes, I have it. The eye contact that means yes, I have given it. The ledger entries that are already traveling toward Persepolis in the summary that the road corps sends each month to the treasury. Somewhere in that summary your name appears as a number. 1 Western Courier, Susa Station. Completed assignment, returned, on time. The summary does not mention the rain. It does not mention the loose stone at the upper ford of the Helis. It does not mention the feel of a Nisaean horse on the Cappadocian plateau, or the way the cedar resin smells in the relay room before dawn, or the moment at the river when the weight of the pouch was no longer against your side, and the world felt slightly different for a few seconds before it stopped feeling different. None of that goes into the summary. None of that needs to. You set your boots beside the mat. You lie down. The reed mat is thin over the packed dirt floor. You have slept on this mat before. Your body knows it. Your body knows the slight depression where the mat is thinner, the smell of the room, the way the sounds of the station organize themselves at this hour, the horses becoming quieter as the night deepens, the guards' footsteps on their circuit of the outer wall, the fire settling in its final stage where the coals are deep and the flames are low, and the heat is a different heat than the heat of active fire, steadier and more generous. Outside, through the thick walls of the station, the city of Susa moves through its evening. The market sounds that rise in the late afternoon are beginning to soften. The sounds of the city at night are different from the sounds of the city by day, fewer, slower, lower in pitch, as if the city is exhaling after the effort of the day. The river runs south. It has been running south since before the city existed. It ran south when the first mud brick walls were built on its banks, when the first irrigation ditches were cut from its channel, when the first tablet was pressed in its clay. It will run south after the city is gone, if the city is ever gone. The river does not run for the city. The city was built for the river. Everything here is built for the river. The cedar resin burns in its dish near the door, the last of the evening's amount, the small fire of it already low. The thread of smoke it produces rises straight in the still air of the room. There is no draught. The night outside is calm. You have run the road for 3 years, and you will run it for as many more years as your body holds, and your record holds, and the empire holds. The empire of Darius is 23 nations and 50 million people and 2,699 kilometers of road that connects them to the king's voice. It is the largest thing that has ever existed, and it exists because people like you carry what it needs carried at the speed the road allows. And you are 24 years old, and your father cuts stone, and your boots are by the mat, and the fire is low. The fire settles in the pit. The horses shift in the stable next door. Outside, the city is quieter now. The river sounds constant, and the city sounds less, and the night is beginning to do what the night does. Press the day back, reclaim the air, lower the temperature in small degrees toward the particular cold that lives at the bottom of the dark. The stars above Susa are the same stars that are above the Helis River tonight, and above Gordian, and above the road as it climbs the Highland Pass, and above the tells rising above the plain, and above the ferry crossing where the old man pulled you across the Tigris this morning in silence. The sky does not change with the direction you are traveling. The sky simply continues. It will be the same sky tomorrow on the road to wherever the next assignment takes you. It will be the same sky over the Persepolis treasury, where the scribes are pressing the day's clay tablets into their final form before the light fails. The same sky over the 43 stations you know by name. The same sky over the 68 you have passed through without learning the names, and the sky over the ones you have not yet seen and may not ever see. The road runs under all of it. You ran the road. The road is still running. The two things are not the same, and that is all right. The road does not need you to be on it, to be the road. You do not need to be on the road to be you. Your breathing is slow. The cedar resin has nearly finished. The last of it sends a thin thread of smoke up toward the ceiling and spreads there in the still air of the room, spreading out until it is everywhere and nowhere, thinner and thinner, until it is simply part of the air itself, and the air is part of the dark, and the dark is part of the night, and the night goes on. The road is the road. You are part of it, and then you are not, and then you will be again. Sleep.